South Carolina football is surging right now. They are now 7-3 after winning a dogfight against Missouri, giving them their fourth straight win. And right now, this is a team that is better than what their record shows. Josh Pate always says, you're not what your record says you are. And South Carolina is the prime definition of that because they're a 7-3 football team, but right now, they're playing like one of the best teams in the SEC at the moment. And if they never would have got cheated by the refs against LSU, that's the only time I'm going to blame the refs for a loss because it was just absurd how the officiating was in that game, and LSU obviously isn't a good team. So South Carolina, if they didn't get cheated out of that win against LSU, they possibly would have only 1 or 2 losses, and it would be right in the middle of the playoff hunt at the moment. But you lose to Alabama and you lose to LSU, it kind of halted some of your momentum. But right now, with the season about to end, South Carolina is surging at the right moment. And the future looks very bright for this program because LaNorris Sellers, this guy is coming on. I remember a few weeks ago, there were South Carolina fans who wanted him benched, but Shane Beamer said, we're not going to bench him because he needs more reps so he can get better. And LaNorris Sellers has quietly gotten better every single game. I never would have thought in a million years I would see a game where LaNorris Sellers would throw 5 touchdowns in the win. I never thought this day would come, at least against an FBS opponent. I could see him throwing 5 touchdowns against FAMU or Grambling or somebody like that, but to throw 5 touchdowns against a pretty good Missouri defense was really impressive. And on the year, he has 14 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. As long as LaNorris Sellers continues this trajectory, South Carolina, either next year or the year after that, not only are they going to be contending for the SEC championship, but they're going to be a potential national championship contender because LaNorris Sellers today against Missouri, he couldn't be stopped. He was throwing dimes all afternoon, and when guys weren't open, he was making dynamic plays on the ground with his legs. If LaNorris Sellers keeps this trajectory up of his development, he could be what a lot of us thought Anthony Richardson would be before he left Florida, which is pretty much unstoppable. The dude is like 240, 250 pounds, running 4.4, 4.5, has a rocket launcher for an arm. And South Carolina also has a couple of young studs around them. You got Nick Harbor, who we really haven't heard that much of this season. We only really know of this guy because he's a monster on College Football 25. But you got a good amount of young talent on that roster. You got an offensive line that has some young players that look promising as well. The offensive line has been one of South Carolina's biggest issues for the last couple of years, but it looks like they finally got that issue figured out on defense. I hope you can keep Dylan Stewart around. I'm pretty confident that you can. You do got a pretty good collective back there in South Carolina. And if you were able to get Rocket Sanders in the portal, I don't see how you couldn't keep Dylan Stewart around. And with how well South Carolina has recruited and developed some of their younger players, this program, they're trending upwards. And coming into this season, I felt like South Carolina was the biggest sleeper team in the SEC this year. I think their over-under win total was only like 5-6 wins. Had them going 7-5, 8-4, and it looks like not only are they going to exceed Vegas expectations, but they're going to exceed my expectations because they could finish this season with 9-10 wins, which would be really impressive. Because at one point, after South Carolina lost to LSU, it was a lot of smoke and a lot of questions about Shane Beamer and what his future with this program was going to be. But, ever since then, this team, since they lost Alabama, they played some great football. And I love Shane Beamer as a coach because he pays attention to the little things. He isn't one of those guys that only cares about offense and defense. He cares about special teams. He cares about winning in all 3 phases of the game, which is what makes him such a great coach. And I think moving forward, as long as South Carolina continues to do a good job of developing some of these young cats that they're getting via recruiting out of high school, not only are they continuing to build a really good culture down there, but they also are building a program that in the next 4 or 5 years, they're going to be a force in this conference for years to come, because people kind of forget that South Carolina in the early 2010s and before, they were one of the more winningest programs in all of college football. I think they're like top 15, top 25 all time in wins. South Carolina has a lot of history. They may not be rooted in the kind of rich history like Alabama and LSU are with a bunch of national championships and whatnot, but when South Carolina was at their peak, when I first got into college football, they were always one of those teams that they were always guaranteed to win anywhere between 9 to 11 games max and maybe get into the SEC title game occasionally. And with how well they've played and them surging down this stretch, I think the future looks very promising for the Gamecocks. And I love Shane Beamer. Beamer Boy, the Beamer Boys, man, you can never count them out, because anytime they're a massive underdog, they always end up finding a way to exceed expectations. And although they were a double-digit favorite today against Missouri, and Missouri played one of their better games of the season, I think some of that was partially due to Brady Cook and his health status being up in the air. But with how well you looked against Missouri, and Missouri was giving it their all, it gives me a lot of reasons to be optimistic for what the future of South Carolina football has in store. And if you're a Gamecocks fan, your optimism should be at an all-time high, because I think Shane Beamer is on the brink of doing some really big things down there for that program in the foreseeable future.